P is a necessary condition for Q, just in case Q never obtains unless P obtains. So think about an example. Oxygen is necessary for fire because fire never occurs unless oxygen is present. Gasoline, or some sort of fuel, is a necessary condition for a car to run because cars don't run that have no fuel. Right? It's not as if, well, you know, this car is really a lot like this other car that has fuel, so it'll run too. Right? Well, they're both Fiat Pandas. How could you be more alike? This is of a kind that does run, so it must run without gas. No, that just doesn't follow. So, if possessing property P is a necessary condition for having R, having rights, then any being lacking P is ipso facto lacks rights. That's what it means to say that possessing some property like the capacity for free moral judgments is necessary for the possession of rights. Second problem, epistemic opacity. If possessing the capacity for free, and now I emphasize free, if possessing the capacity for free moral judgment is a necessary condition for possessing rights, then we are not in a good position to attribute rights to humans, since it remains an open metaphysical question whether any human beings possess this kind of freedom. I spent the last 6 days, the 6 days of last week in Slovenia at a conference on freedom, determinism, and responsibility. There's no agreement whether human beings are free or whether we're just biologically determined organisms like people perceive all other organisms to be. Right? So, boy, before we can attribute rights to someone, we have to settle the deep metaphysical problem of whether humans have rights. I mean, of whether humans are metaphysically free. Boy, I hope my rights don't rest on that. Got to wait for a philosopher to do something. So, man. And what's worse, what if it turns out we don't have freedom of the requisite sort? Well, then we don't have rights. Nobody has rights. So that's what I mean by epistemic opacity. We're not going to be in a position to tell which beings have this unique metaphysical property. So if we want the notion of rights to be useful, we would like to have a criterion for rights that we can apply with some degree of reliability. Third, the problem I call multiple kind membership and no account of relevant kinds. Kinds are abstract entities akin to Platonic forms, and normal adult humans belong to indefinitely many kinds. For example, we belong to the kind biological organism. We are all biological organisms, so we belong to that kind. We belong to the kind animals. That's one of our taxonomic classifications. That's another kind that we belong to. We belong to the following kinds: mammals, primates, great apes, Homo sapiens. Many of us belong to the following kinds as well: adult human, rational agent, moral agent. Some of us belong to the kind white human being. Others belong to the kind black human being, and so on. Of all these different kinds, why pick species as the relevant kind? Okay, still developing this particular worry. Normalcy, remember, you acquire rights in virtue of belonging to a kind for whom it's normal that the normal beings in that kind have the capacity for free moral judgment. Suppose we were to pick primates as the relevant kind instead of Homo sapiens. Primates. Well, since human beings make up the vast majority of primates on Earth, on the assumption that most humans possess the capacity for free moral judgment, I just say on that assumption, since I think the metaphysical question is unsettled, but on that assumption, it follows that all primates belong to a kind whose normal members possess the capacity for free moral judgment. And so, all primates, including chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, orangutans, lemurs, have rights. I thought we were going to get an argument that animals lack rights. And now it turns out that these animals belong to a kind primate, the norm for which is to be a free moral agent. So they have rights by extension, just like retarded human beings. Well, suppose we pick some other property, like animal, as the relevant kind. Then, since the overwhelming majority of animals on the planet lack the capacity for free moral judgment, it follows that all humans belong to a kind whose normal members lack the capacity for free moral judgment. Consequently, if animal is the relevant kind, then it follows that normal adult humans lack rights because they belong to a kind whose normal members lack the capacity for free moral judgment. Right? You take what's normal, and then you, by extension, exclude even the exceptions. It's just running the argument in the backwards direction. I wish this argument I've just given you, this third criticism, were unique to me, but it's due to Nathan Novus in his Carl Cohen's kind argument for animal rights and against human rights that was published in 2004 in the Journal of Applied Philosophy, a very, very tightly argued paper. And finally, the roots of the third criticism were already presented in James Rachel's work before Cohen ever published anything, so I think Cohen should have read Rachel's. Here's a quote from Rachel's. "The idea that how individuals should be treated is determined by what is normal for their species will not bear close inspection." He continues right away. "Suppose that a chimpanzee learned to read and speak English, and suppose he eventually was able to converse about science, literature, and morals. Finally, he wanted to attend university classes. Now, suppose someone argued as follows. Only humans should be allowed to attend these classes. Humans can read, talk, and understand science. Chimps cannot. But this chimp can do those things. Yes, but normal chimps cannot, and that is what matters." This is still Rachel's. "This argument is weak. It assumes that we should determine how an individual is to be treated not on the basis of that individual's qualities, but on the basis of other individuals' qualities. This chimp is not permitted to do something that requires reading, despite the fact that he can read, because other chimps cannot. That seems not only unfair, but irrational." So Rachel's, and I think he's very underappreciated in this area of ethics, in animal ethics. I think he is one of the most important people that has worked in this area. Anyway, he ends up defending a position he calls moral individualism, that the way we ought to treat individuals should be a function of those individuals' own qualities and properties, not properties that happen to be normal for some group or that they accidentally happen to belong to. Okay. Interim conclusion. Cohen's case against animal rights is extremely weak. Where does this leave us? First, we cannot validly conclude that animals do have rights just because Cohen's weak argument against animal rights fails. For there might be some good argument against animal rights that we haven't considered yet. Nevertheless, we've been presented with a valid argument for animal rights, Regan's argument, that remains unscathed by Cohen's argument. So in order to reject the claim that animals have rights, one must reject one of Regan's premises. How might one object to Regan's argument? First, observe that the case for animal rights offered by Regan is a conditional proof. It succeeds only on the condition that normal adult humans possess rights. So how does Regan defend the claim that humans have rights? Well, by arguing that that's the only adequate way to account for our duties to our fellow human beings. Utilitarians, for example, think that consequentialist ethics provides the best account of our duties to humans. They insist that human rights is a philosopher's fiction. As Jeremy Bentham famously put it, talk of natural rights is nonsense. And talk of natural and imprescriptible rights, Bentham tells us, is nonsense on stilts. And now he's just talking about rights of humans, right? So there are many philosophers prepared to deny that humans have rights, but think the best way of accounting for our duties to humans is with some